You're this perp back with another video, and finally, after 3 years in the making, we finally get a new season of Stranger Things. This is Stranger Things 4, or also known as Stranger Things Season 4. Man, and this is only Volume 1. Volume 2, the last two episodes, are going to be coming out later in the summer in about in about a month, a little bit over a month in July. And man, I cannot wait. And it makes sense why they split this up into two volumes or two parts. Man, there's so much to dive into with this season. Each episode got extended. The last episode of this volume was about like an hour and 40 minutes, which is crazy. The final episode of this season is going to be 2.5 hours, which I cannot wait to just immerse myself in that. And I've definitely immersed myself. I've binged all 7 episodes. This will contain spoilers. Let me know also how y'all are digging the new intro. Just made it, and I felt like this was the perfect time to show it off. So I hope people enjoy it. That aside, with that being said, spoiler alert, if you haven't caught up all the way with Volume 1, you have been warned. So, how can I break this down? Let's start with Episode 1 and just kind of go from there, because Episode 1 was fantastic, man. It was pretty much like a catch-up episode. But before we get into that, they released the first 8 minutes, and I made a video about the first 8 minutes. And originally I thought it was like Dustin throwing out papers, but it was a whole flashback, and it showed 11 and what it looked like 11 killing all her like kind of siblings or other like brothers and sisters that she pretty much grew up with in this lab. They're all kind of their own type of 11s. Like, we saw 8 back in season 2, and we do see the younger version of 8 in this as well, but she obviously was able to get away. But how they explain all that going towards the end is just like, it changes my whole perspective on this series as a whole. Now, with that being the setup, and we go back to that first 8 minutes of the first episode a lot throughout this the season, a lot out of these first few episodes. So like I said, this is pretty much like a catch-up episode. A lot's happened. 11 is now kind of keeping track, or at least keeping contact with Mike, because now she lives in Cali with Joyce, Will, and Jonathan. And Jonathan, his whole character took a whole 180, because before this season came out, I just felt like he was the weakest character. But him meeting his new friend Argyle, which is the funniest name, and Argyle is a really dope character. He's a really dope new character. Jonathan pretty much turned into a pothead, and I feel like that's the best thing they could have done for his character. That aside, she has to deal with a lot. She lost her powers. She's trying to make friends at this new school. She's writing all these letters to Mike and kind of lying to him, making it seem like she's really fitting in when, these people are treating her like shit. She even gets to a point where she tries to use her powers and realizes she can't, and kind of embarrasses herself in front of like everybody in school, and they really pick on her. There's some nasty bullying in this, and 11 has definitely really been through a lot. She's never been that type to be the aggressor, but you definitely see when she's pushed to the edge where she kind of feels powerless, all pun intended. And it is a crazy kind of side to see from 11, because she really is kind of just trying to do things by herself. And that's why I really like about her character and her arc throughout this series, and especially this one, because it's a very personal story. And can she stand on her own without Hopper, because she doesn't know if Hopper's alive. Which brings me to my next thing with Joyce and her getting this message that Hopper is still alive and stuff like that. And that's probably like the most wackiest arc about this whole entire season, is that whole Joyce adventure trying to pretty much find Hopper. But then going back to the kids, man, it's dope to see all their different perspectives and where they're at, because now they're in high school, so it's a completely different atmosphere. And obviously at that time, for people that have gone through high school, you know, your friends change. Once you go into middle school, you start wanting to hang around different crowds, which we get a lot more Lucas in this season as well. You know, Mike and Dustin are still pretty close. They're still into the whole Dungeons and Dragons, but now it's called the Hellfire Club, and it's kind of like a more extreme version of that. So it's a little bit more mature. But Lucas is kind of now distancing himself from everybody. Will is still kind of feeling way distant since like season 2, and you know, I liked how they kind of played around with that relationship between Mike and Will, because they haven't been really seeing eye to eye, and they were always best friends. And just as they gotten older and just more things have started happening in each one of their lives, they just become more and more distant. So I like that they really touched on that as well. And that's where we also get introduced to another new character that is very pivotal to just the overall story of this season, is Eddie. He's kind of the head of the Hellfire Club and whatnot, and he gets himself into a bit of a pickle with this character named Christy, which, let's get into what I feel like is the best villain that Stranger Things has ever put out so far in this series, and we finally are starting to see the end game. His name is Vecna, and man, when they introduce his character in the very first episode, and it's very Nightmare on Elm Street-esque. Like, if one thing, like, just to kind of put that out there, if they ever were to make a new Nightmare on Elm Street, please get like the Duffer Brothers or just whoever was involved with this season to make that, because they definitely paid a lot of homage to Nightmare on Elm Street, just with the design of Vecna. And just having Robert Englund in here is really dope as well. I don't think he was even wasted as a character as well, being a special guest. Because something like Choose or Die, they definitely wasted Robert Englund. But here, he's a very pivotal character, man. And it just, we'll get into that as well, because it just, the way everything came together was dope. And the utilization of like Max, once again, Max is a big player in this season as well. Her dealing with the loss of Billy, and her just kind of being distant from Lucas, and Lucas being worried about her, and her being a part of just this whole Vecna's curse and stuff, and how that's affecting her. It got really dark. It, like, for her character, her arc got really dark, man. It's crazy. And that's what I really love about these characters. They could be gone for like 3 years, come back, and still have this chemistry. And it feels real authentic. And shout outs to Steve. You know, Steve is definitely a fan favorite. There's definitely a lot of times where you thought he was possibly going to die. It's very much possible that these characters could be on the chopping block. I just don't think they want to kill them off just quite yet. This volume 1 was mainly to just kind of bring some of our core characters together, and also the introduction, or just having more of Erica in this. And you can't spell Erica without you can't spell America without Erica. She is always dope, very consistent. Love her character throughout this. just the whole setup of the villain, just like he's going around killing people, and it's kind of bringing everybody back to Hawkins, and we're able to go to multiple different locations. Like we're in California, we're in Russia, and I like the subplot with Hopper, where we get to see him go through a lot of like hard shit with the whole Russia thing, and we see that he survived at the end of season 3, where a lot of people presumed him to be dead. And I just thought it was just so well done, man. And we get a lot more backstory that we didn't really know about Hopper, and just the reason why he lost his daughter. And that shit was really sad, but that was a really big highlight. But like I said, the goofiest things about that was just the Joyce and Murray stuff. Even though it was funny, I just felt like I could see that being some people's negatives, or they might like it. Even though like Murray was talking throughout this whole entire series about being like a black belt, and he finally shows that he definitely is a black belt. He definitely has been learning some Miyagi-Do karate, so that was cool. But all that aside, going back to 11 and just seeing her interactions with all these different characters, her trying to figure things out with Mike trying to figure things out with 11, and her dealing with bullying and stuff in school. She cracks this one chick, Angela, and she deserves it with a skate. And I just that was a great moment, even though she wants to be more than just that. She wants to be a hero, and I love how Mike has kind of put that in her head, like, yo, you're a superhero, you're supposed to save us and whatnot. It was a really good pep talk, man. But there's some like the new characters are really dope. There's a character named Jason that you get introduced to, and he's like dating the chick Christy that ends up getting killed, and he kind of turns into this like almost religious freak, where there's this witch hunt out for Eddie, because Eddie's the only one that saw Christy die, and he just left the scene, and he's just been on the run. But then he comes across like Dustin and all of them, and they're trying to help him, and he's a very integral part of this overall story just for that part. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with Jason's character, because he's definitely got something about his character that I'm curious to see where they're going to go with his character. Like, are they going to make him another secondary villain going into the finale? Who knows? Or maybe Lucas will have to be the one to step up to take him down. It's going to be interesting. But Eddie is, like I said, very dope character, new character. Argyle, he's another one that kind of brings that comedic relief. Then we also got Enzo, which he is kind of like the Russian guy. He's like this Russian guard trying to kind of help, but also kind of extort, trying to get some money out of it. He's the one that kind of helps Hopper to kind of escape prison, but ends up fucking up. And I love that, like, they weren't successful the first time, but as they kind of stick together, they started to have this bond with each other. It was really dope. And we have a lot of unlikely bonds, like seeing Nancy have these scenes with Robin, and Robin was a really dope addition last season, and she's really dope. And I always thought that Robin and Steve would be a thing, but they pretty much made it clear that they're just friends in this. But speaking of rekindling flames and stuff, they do kind of tease Steve and Nancy kind of starting to reconnect, because things between Jonathan and Nancy aren't really seeing eye to eye. They kind of have different kind of paths, because he was supposed to, he was supposed to be somewhere, but he ended up not showing up. He was supposed to come back to Hawkins, I'm pretty sure. But anyways, it's gonna be interesting to see Jonathan and Nancy, when they reunite, how that interaction's going to be, considering she's starting to have more feelings for Steve. But she's stuck right now in the Upside Down, which, that's a long story, man. There's so much to unpack. Just the way the main villain, Vecna, was just going around killing people, just not in just a generic way. There was a reason he was killing people to kind of form these portals. But the whole backstory on the main villain is where it gets crazy, because it gets to a point where the big part of this season is 11 trying to get back her powers, and we get the return of Dr. Brenner and stuff and whatnot. And you also have the military and just the government's kind of at war, like kind of split sides. Like, some think that 11 is dangerous and needs to be taken out. Some people feel like, no, she's not the problem, it's somebody else. With that being said, going into like the later episodes, that's where we kind of really get into what's really going on here, where she's getting her powers and she's going through her memories. And if you remember the first episode, like I said, the first eight minutes, you see that it looks like 11 killed everybody. But no, we get introduced to 1. And 1 is pretty much the puppet master here. He's been tapping into the Upside Down way before 11. And I really want to see that prequel right there. That would be really dope to see. If they do any other prequels. And that's how pretty much Vecna is born, is because of 1. And now that is going to be an epic showdown for the next 2 episodes going into the final season. This season was incredible. There's a lot of character development with Max, with just a lot of our main characters. Some you could say Mike definitely kind of took a back seat a little bit, but I think it was still important for 11's overall arc and just making things right between him and Will. Will definitely kind of takes a back seat in this, and where he used to be kind of like at the forefront in the earlier seasons, but it's all good because it all comes full circle, and we kind of see what happens between the first interaction between 11 and 1, and that was a dope little fight. And this was a really well thought out season, I should say. And just these 7 episodes were just so well paced. The music was fucking phenomenal. It's always on point with the whole 80s synths and stuff like that. It was dope. Just the use of just horror, like I said, it has very much Nightmare on Elm Street vibes. They even reference Freddy Krueger with Freddy Krueger in the series. It's so meta too, and it's dope. I like the little jokes. The humor really worked for me. I don't think there was anything that really took me out or just felt out of place. Overall, I think this is definitely their best season so far, and I can't believe we only have 1 more to go. I do predict that we will get season 5 probably in 2024 or 2025 at the latest. I know people don't like to wait, they're very impatient, but 3 years in the making, I think this was completely worth it. I might have to do a live discussion. I don't know, maybe if I have time, but I hope I didn't miss anything, because there was so much to unpack. But I loved what they did with all these different characters. You had things going on with Russia. You had all these different tones, and it really was juggled very well. And man, I think they really outdid themselves. So let me know how you guys feel about this in the comments below. I know this was a very long review, but I hope y'all enjoyed it. Till next time, I'm out. Peace.